Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with Ioana June Thiessen and Louis D'Souza. Today is Monday, March the 30th, 2020. It's 4 p.m. New York time. And wherever you are in the world, thanks for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And we're going to get this week off to a really positive start. I mean, everybody is in LOA circles is doing a very good job of trying to stay into that positive zone. And we want to kind of help that along and help you feel good. It's a topic that I think is kind of behind all of the other topics, staying well in the midst of a pandemic. But I just realized actually late last night, we've never actually discussed that directly on the show during this entire time. So maybe we should actually talk about what it takes to stay well, because I mean, that's pretty important, I think. So first of all, I want to say hello to everybody. Ioana, how you doing? I'm glad to see that you got everything set up. You're ready to go. You're ready to rock.
Yes, my husband is here today, so he kind of helps me get everything set up. Whenever he's here, it just everything goes so smoothly.
It's great to have an IT guy on site. It always helps.
Yes, definitely.
And of course, Louis is an IT guy, so he's always on site. How you doing over there, Louis? How's things in the UK?
Well, great, thanks. A lot to talk about, but I just wanted to say hello, Ioana, Walt, and all the listeners. Yeah,
hello.
Absolutely. So let's get right to it, because there is a lot to talk about. And Louis, I think I'll go to you first because you have, I don't know, the most to talk about. So tell us, how do we stay well?
Well, how do I stay well? There's a long topic. So what I do now is really simple and very easy. That's not the long topic. The long topic is how I got there. And being a sick kid and, having asthma from a young age, taking loads of antibiotics, most of my childhood, getting every sickness that ever came around, to being fitter and healthier than I've ever been in my entire life at the age of 54 or whatever I am. I can't remember. I never remember it's 53 or 54, so I made it 54,
I used to count anniversaries after my 29th, and I kind of lost count of that too. So I understand, believe me.
So it's been a journey, I've been always fascinated with the body, really fascinated, when I was telling people what I've done with the body, people want to run away, I've given myself enemas, and I've gone and shat in the bushes and checked out my poo on a daily basis to understand it, and so on and so forth. So, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And then I studied herbs and nutrition, and then I started studying the combination of proteins and carbohydrates and what a balanced nutrition actually is. And then I started understanding about yoga and breathing and all the rest of it. So it's been an incredible journey to get to where I am today, to feel confident to deal with almost anything that comes my way and to enjoy dealing with it. So, it's a long discussion.
Well, it's a good start. You got us going. You did your job in that sense, right? So that's good. So we'll go over to the statistician, Ioana, and the neurophysical expert as well. So
yes,
tell us about the other side of that story.
The statistician / neuroscientist and all the above, which is, it's so interesting that this pandemic is allowing me to wear both hats, as far as, all the models that are being generated for the disease.
Well, what we figured is you got your degree and you were also working on the other one. We might as well put you to work right away. So that's the way we're looking at this.
Yeah, this is definitely job security, unfortunately. But like Louis, I've always been interested in health, not just academically, but from a personal standpoint. And so I've always been looking at what's going on as far as the newest things, state of the art, and experimenting on myself and on my family, unfortunately. But, just kind of, collecting data and seeing what works. And so it has put me in a good place right now, so that with this pandemic, I'm able to how draw on some of the things that I've been learning and that I've incorporated into my life, such that now some of them are very much habitual, of course, like exercising regularly and making sure that I'm eating a healthy diet and getting the sleep that is so important, for both physical and mental health. And also like we discussed last week about gratitude, and I was so inspired by my own talk that
Well, good for you. That's great.
I know that I really,
That's always good.
I know I actually embarked on a practice of gratitude again.
Very good.
I've done this a few times in my life and it hasn't stuck, but I've decided over the last week so both my husband and I, we gotten gratitude journals. And so now every morning we write, a few things that we're grateful for to start the day. And that has been just a tremendous, uplift in our spirits and in our moods and our attitude. And it has helped a whole lot. So, yeah, so those are just some of the things that, and even now I'm kind of learning on social media, paying attention to what other people are doing to help them as they deal with this. And that's been very enlightening as well. So, yeah, that's one of the good things that's coming out of all of this.
It is. I mean, the fact is we've got this social media, we got this interconnectivity through the major social media sites and other forums as well, different apps and so forth. And we're using it. We're using it to share information. I mean, now some people are sharing information to terrorize each other, but most of us in the LOA circles are sharing information to help each other.
To help.
And that's pretty cool. I mean, that's really using it the best way you could possibly use it, I think.
Yeah.
I'm really loving my LOA group I created some time ago, and everybody's been so supportive. It's unbelievable. People have been making audio meditations and putting them up so that other people can listen to them, current, relevant, etc. It's just brilliant how, some people have said, I've got a problem. My mom's on a ventilator, and, the support that the individual was getting from everybody was amazing. Really amazing.
It's phenomenal. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And every time somebody posts something, somebody posts something, it really reiterates just how much support there is and how willing people are to support. Probably because we're all kind of going through it at the same time, so we're all very focused on it.
Yes.
But boy, this LOA circle has really focused on it in a very positive way. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did mean to interrupt you.
Don't worry, I'll never forgive you.
Do you remember what your train of thought was before I interrupted you?
Oh, you pretty much took the words out of my mouth. That's cool.
Oh, sorry. My enthusiasm.
Last week Louis said something about sharing an energy. What was it, Louis? Do you remember the last admonition you gave us about sharing love energy or energy, positive energy? I don't know, something about energy, but anyways, and I thought that was so true. Just like, everybody's so worried about this virus, this physical virus, and the possibility of being infected by it. There's another virus that's going on. Of course, there's the fear virus that's affecting a lot of people, but there's also the virus of love and hope and just like Walt said, realizing that we're all in this together, and that helps a lot, because I know a lot of people are dealing with a lot of anxiety, as we talked about, and it can be very anxiety producing when you see people around you being so afraid, and then talking about the numbers and all the different things. And so the minute you think you might be having a symptom, that can be very scary for some people, and especially for people who prior to this were dealing with anxiety issues. That something like this does not help at all. But fortunately, because of social media, people are able to channel into as Louis mentioned, things that can help. I know, for example, my sister, who's a nurse, and she she was sharing on all my sisters, we are part of a WhatsApp chat group, and she was saying how she was getting chest pains because she's going to go back out to work next week, and supposedly the ward that she works on is going to be converted to the coronavirus ward.
Oh, lovely.
Really anxious about that.
Yeah.
But we were all able to, reassure her that, first of all, it's what it is, but it's not a death sentence getting the
Right.
virus. And there are things that you can do to take charge. But I shared with her this, I quickly Googled breathing for anxiety on YouTube, and I got a number of different videos, and I shared with her one of those videos, and she started doing it, and in about 5 minutes she texted me saying, "Oh, this is really helping," because she was having
Very good.
the chest pains, and so she just started, breathing slowly, doing, I think it's box breathing, or one of those where you breathe in twice or half as long as you breathe out, kind of thing, and just doing some of those things. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, mindful breathing, I guess I might call
Yeah, exactly.
it. Right. Yeah,
And it
that's
helped
good
her
stuff.
a lot. Yeah.
There's a great breath technique which I've mentioned a few times on the show, but it's called the 4-7-8.
Mm-hmm.
You breathe in for 4 counts, you
Mm-hmm.
hold for 7, and you breathe out for 8.
Yeah.
And it's extremely powerful. And if you just go into YouTube, anybody can go on YouTube, just type the word 4-7-8. Well, not the word, the letters. And you'll come up with 2 main ones. One is an animated one, and one is by a doctor. And both of them are very, very interesting to watch and use, and very, very effective. Do not underestimate the 4-7-8. It's very, very
No,
powerful.
I have tried it, and let me tell you, it relaxes you, and I've tried it and fallen asleep, so I know it definitely is very, very calming. It's great. Yeah. Yeah, because we know
fabulous.
how much the breath is connected to the heart rate as well as to the brain function. So it actually does make a difference.
Interesting thing too. I saw an article that appeared in the Los Angeles Times. They were making the argument that they want to change the phrase. We call it social distancing. They want to call it physical distancing. And their point was, we actually want to be socially connected.
Yes.
And I thought that was a great point, because there's actually a lot of evidence that suggests that people who are socially connected not only have happier attitudes and happier lives, but they're more successful in life. And I would not be at all surprised if the same thing applies to health. I haven't seen any actual data. Maybe you have, maybe you know stuff like this, but I wouldn't be surprised if people who are more socially connected probably would have fewer illness, and when they do have illnesses, they are less severe and they're able to get over them quicker, I would think.
Yes, actually, it's funny you should say that. So there's a big study that's being conducted by Harvard University. In fact, I think it's complete. It's like a multi-year, thousands of people study, and they were trying to come up with all the factors that are involved in what makes people healthy in terms of, living healthy, disease-free life. And they have found that social connectedness is the most important factor, more than anything else. Yes. And along with that, they found that loneliness is actually the greater risk of disease. And they are now calling loneliness the new nicotine.
Really?
Yes, in terms of how detrimental it is to your health. Because they're realizing that there are people who have all these other diseases, but if they are connected socially, it tends to somehow alleviate all the other, minimize the effect of all the others. So social connectedness is really very important. And also, I've been doing that, the Science of Wellness course that you mentioned, that's online from Coursera from Yale through Coursera. And one of the videos that they recommended was one by Martin Siegelman. And he is like the father of positive psychology.
Right.
And so he was talking in his research about, how psychology has shifted from their focus on all the mental illness and all the negative stuff to now this area of, let's find out about what makes people happy. And so what he has found out in his research is that the happiest people are the ones who are more socially connected.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying that he doesn't know, he's not claiming that as we say in statistics, correlation is not causation. So he doesn't know if that their socialness, social, causes them to be happier, or because they're happier, they are more socially connected. But definitely there is that that connection. So yeah, so being connected is extremely important. And fortunately, at this time when we are physically separated, we're still able to be connected to each other through other means. So that's important. Yeah.
There's an interesting side note about Dr. Seligman, is that before he pioneered the positive psychology movement, he put out one of the most depressing books ever written in the history of psychology. It was a book called Helplessness. And if you ever want to just go into like deep depression, read that book.
Yes,
it will
yes,
just
yes,
absolutely wipe it. You'll be in a closet sucking your thumb by the time you're done with it. So when I heard he had actually become the father of the positive psychology movement, I said, whoa, what is this guy, like bipolar or something? It was just this huge shift in his focus. It was really something.
Yes. And we're all glad that he shifted.
Absolutely, yes. So Louis, let's go back to some of your experience, because like you were saying, you've had quite the lifetime of dealing with various kinds of illnesses and conditions and learning to overcome them and get to the point where essentially through your various practices, you were able to make yourself completely healthy. I mean, somebody looking at you on the video as we're doing this would have a hard time believing that you're 53 or 54 or something around there.
45.
I mean, you have the look of like a 35-year-old. So
there we go.
It doesn't really make any difference what number is at this point. So talk about it a little bit.
I don't know.
More.
I'd like 25. So talk about what precisely? Sorry, carry on.
Well, just talk about what you've learned along the way that has helped you to make that transition. I mean, you went through a whole lot, but what made the difference for you?
Well, I've mentioned this again before, but it's always worthwhile mentioning again.
Yes, because I haven't heard it yet.
Now, whose fault is it you're not listening to my podcast?
Well, she was busy. She was off getting a PhD in statistics, so we have to give her a little slack for that.
Maybe this time. So when I was young, I stumbled across You Are What You Eat, and it was an epiphany for me, and I was blown away by it. And it was like, wow, you eat healthier things and you become healthier. And, what am I eating and what should I be eating? And I started studying minerals and vitamins and nutrition and all the rest of it. And it was fascinating to me, and I got much healthier through all that. And then I had my second, far greater epiphany. You are how you breathe. And sorry. My second one was you are what and how you drink. And I was fascinated in the whole story about water and the memory of water, and starting to put love and appreciation or gratitude on all my water containers, and making sure that I get my salt water relationship right. And it was like amazing. It was such an incredibly increase in my understanding. My next one, which was a much, much greater epiphany, is you are what and how you breathe. And then I started studying the 4-7-8, the Kapalbhati, the yoga breathing, the Bhastrika, and all of that. And that took me to a level which I was completely surprised about. Took me out of my body. It cleaned my body. It brought back vitality to my body. It completely changed everything. And then, of course, I stumbled across Abraham Hicks, and I started realizing you are what you think. And that is a far greater than all the others.
And you're describing an exponential curve here. You realize that?
I know. And it's interesting that I did it in order.
Yeah, that's even better.
Because when I got to the first three, I used to love going up to people and say, which one would you die of first? Would you die of lack of nutrition, lack of liquid, or lack of oxygen? And then people would eventually get around to the idea that it's oxygen first, then liquids, and then nutrition. So I'd say to them something like, well, if you get the breathing right, you can pretty much forget about the first one. If you get the second two right, you can completely forget about the first one almost. And which one, I would say to them, which one does society focus on? And they would say nutrition, because it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I started, I had the epiphany about breathing. I was like so excited, and I went to my dad. Oh, Dad, you got to breathe properly. He said, I've been breathing. I'm like 60 years old and I'm still breathing. What do you mean I'm breathing wrong? And I had to acknowledge that point. It's a valid point. It's different for people to understand there's breathing and breathing. It's
Absolutely. I mean, when you have that much experience breathing, to be told that you've been doing it wrong all your life makes you wonder, well, how did
exactly.
I last this long? I mean,
oh, dear. So yeah, I learned to phrase it with other people much slightly differently along the way. So yeah, it's been a journey, and of course, the biggest bar none is you are what you think. Because how you think affects how you breathe. How you think affects how you drink. How you think affects how you eat. And there's nothing thought does not affect, nothing in your physical universe. So thoughts became the priority. And then you started understanding, focusing more on what you want, not what you don't want. So you started studying about, wow, I've been thinking so many things that I've been worried about. What the whole idea of thinking more positively did for me was it started eliminating all fear, and it started giving me my power back. I started not fearing a black cat or, any superstitiously type thing. And we all have our own differently, weirdly, superstitiously type thing. All of those vanished because I started realizing I create my reality. None of that. If I believe a ladder is going to cause me harm, it's going to cause me harm. If I believe it's got nothing to do with anything, it's not going to have anything to do with anything. So I started focusing far more on what I want, and my health increased massively again to an unprecedented degree. But what it did for me more than anything was it took away the stress my mind was giving me. And that is the greatest gift I believe it gave me. I don't have that mental stress anymore. I'm not worried about things. I don't have that angst at the back anymore. I now know that if I'm worried about it, what is it? I put it into a subject. Okay, I'm worried about maybe getting the virus, which I'm not. I actually wouldn't mind it.
I love that.
But it's like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I was healthy? And I'd immediately follow that chain of thought, and I'd focus on that, and that would alleviate all the other problems straight away. So yeah.
And I mentioned it a moment ago, and I kind of joked about it, that you look quite a bit younger than your physical age is. Was that always the case for you? I mean, was there a time, particularly early on in your development, as you were learning about food, about drink, about breathing, and ultimately about thought, where your physical age maybe matched your physical look?
Well, I had a beard, and I had a lot of stress, and I had alopecia, which means 50-cent piece of 50-cent size, 50 pence in the UK is about that size. Quite big if you got your thumb and forefinger of no hair in my head in about 6 different places. Just my hair fell out. And I had bags under my eyes that were quite noticeable. And I had back pain so much that I couldn't bend without literally crying and pain. So at that stage, I probably looked my age.
Sounds like you may have been older than your age at that point.
Yeah, but it was a long journey. It was not a short journey to get from where I was to where I am now. It's been a very gentle step by step, following one thing, following another. I'd love to tell everybody, hey, jump into focusing more on what you want than what you don't want. But I fully understand from my own journey that you could be on the nutrition bend at the moment. You could be on the water bend, you could, or liquid bend, you could be on the breathing one, or you could be in all of them mixed up together. You could be anywhere. And, whatever drives an individual as you get now is where you should be. If stats drives you, then great, go and study and work and use them, and if psychology works for you well, then go for it. So really, I strongly recommend that you go where you're, what focus on what you want. So yeah, I like those shorts, man.
I was wondering if you saw that.
Hey, we have a live.
You need one of these screens.
I do need one of these screens very badly. I have this model walking behind me, getting drink and all kinds.
But you have the option in Zoom right now just to turn it on.
I know. I should ask my model, who's been modeling behind me, to do that for me. To get a screen for me.
Hey, we have a question and a comment in the live stream. Josephine has been writing, and you may know the answer to this, Yona.
Hi,
You may know it too, but I'm going to lean toward Yona knowing it, but we'll see. She says, Joseph Murphy discusses the power of belief when it comes to staying healthy. He healed himself from a skin cancer through the power of prayer and impressing the subconscious mind. So she asks, have you heard of Joseph Murphy? She says he is in the same the same group of people as Neville Goddard. He wrote The Power of the Subconscious Mind. So,
yes,
do you know
I've
Murphy?
heard of him. Yes, and I've read his book, The Power of the Subconscious Mind. Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, he was probably one of the first books I read, because he's also in more of the Christian kind of ideology. So it's Christianity and a combination of positive thinking. And he talks about, the power of the subconscious mind. And he gives a lot of strategies and tools to help you. And I think that's one of the things that was important for me to realize. It was quite a journey on this, as far as the LOA revelation is concerned, because when I first encountered LOA through the Secret, and I learned about positive thinking and, how the power of the mind. But I also learned as I went along that we have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. And with the conscious mind, we it's easy to think the positive thoughts there. But as Joseph Murphy and others teach you, that you also have to be aware of what's happening at the subconscious level, which tends to be, of course, more insidious, but even sometimes much more powerful than what we're doing with our conscious mind. So we have to work on both the conscious and the subconscious mind in order to be able to be in alignment, as it were.
Yeah, the concept of conscious and subconscious is actually, believe it or not, it's a source of controversy in LOA circles. Louis can probably explain this with more clarity than I can, but my impression is that Abraham, for instance, doesn't really do a whole lot of distinguishing between conscious and subconscious. In fact, they don't really talk about subconscious very much at all. Am I correct about that? They don't really talk about subconscious.
Well, I can explain it all to you.
Okay, go for it.
So Abraham Hicks completely says emphatically that there is no such thing as an unconscious mind. Okay, so she used the word unconscious rather than subconscious. Not much difference, really. And it is explained like this. So if you are worried about your subconscious, you are worried about something you believe, A, you didn't program, B, you don't have control over. Okay, so that's generally the definition of subconscious, unconscious, something that just hangs around. You don't really know what it is, and it does bad things to you. Am I right or wrong? I don't know.
Well, actually, the way I hear it is subconscious is where the programming is. So the subconscious mind is the programmed mind.
Yes, the programmed mind. That's what I think too.
So sorry, carry on.
Oh, no, I was just saying that, I mentioned to Walt yesterday that I'm rereading The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. And that's one of the main premise of his book, is that there is this 5% conscious mind where we make all these declarations and affirmations as far as positive thinking is concerned. But then there's this programming that is in our subconscious that is contrary to those positive thoughts. And he outlined different methods by which you can get the conscious mind and the subconscious mind to be on the same page, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So Abram points out that the subconscious mind they perceive that humans have talked about is created, or somebody coined the phrase, because of old programs that they've programmed themselves with that are active in because of their conscious creation. So they were thinking about what they didn't want again and again, and what it does is it becomes an active vibration in your psyche. But now you've moved on to digging a hole or climbing a hill or fishing or something. So you're now focused on something else, but this active vibration inside you, which you programmed, nobody else, okay, is still running. So it still has an activeness. So Abram says, so the most important thing to understand about what humans call the subconscious or unconscious is that you programmed it, nobody else. All right. And once you understand that, you start understanding that you have control over how to move forward, because you originally programmed it. And if you've got a glass and it's got a lot of dirty water in it, if you keep on pouring clean water into the glass, eventually that water will get cleaner and cleaner. So as you continually focus on what you want rather than what you don't want, those subconscious thoughts, etc., will not have the power they had before, because what you want and where your focus is now becomes the dominant vibration and will become amplified by the law of attraction. And that is what will manifest more in your life. Consequently, the subconscious, unconscious, or the old thought patterns which you were focused on what you didn't want, which are sitting in the background, start vanishing. And that is how they put it.
It's an interesting way of describing it, because I think we could probably, instead of calling it a subconscious mind, we could call it perhaps the old conscious mind, or
the old vibrational program.
Yeah, what I used to be thinking about rather than what I'm thinking about now.
Which immediately starts giving greater clarity to this vague subconscious, unconscious word, which had been banded around so in many times in the past.
Oh, yes. With many different definitions, I might add.
Yeah,
just to make things interesting.
Confusing, exactly. Yeah, I wanted to add that I think it's important, especially Walt, you mentioned yesterday that when I shared about the research on gratitude and how the researchers were able to determine that even the subjects who said, well, I don't know how to be grateful. That's like, I don't know. And what the research showed was that even those who actually even just tried, what it was having a positive effect on them.
Which is
and
interesting.
I think in line with that is that it's important to express the idea that for those of us in the LOA community, right, when we, well, I should say for me, I maybe there are others, when you learn about the idea of positive thinking and you decide, okay, I'm going to be positive thinking and focus on what I want, and then, you know, it doesn't always manifest into what you want. You know, it's important to realize it's not because you're not doing it right or something is wrong, or it's because there are other issues there. So you may have conscious positive thoughts, but programmed not so positive thoughts that are sending out these vibrations that are not at the same level as your conscious thinking. And that's what's probably causing a lot of problems. And I know a lot of people tend to get very, some people can get discouraged by that and think, well, you know, this thing doesn't work or whatever, you know. And so you have to be aware of the fact that there is this other vibrational energy that you might be sending out along with your conscious thoughts. And sometimes that can be stronger and more powerful until, as Louis said, you learn to overcome that, if that's the right word. But as you pour more clean water to dilute the dirty water such that, you know, the positive thinking becomes the stronger of the vibrations.
Mhm.
So, Yona, I like to explain this whole thing with a little bit of a story of my childhood. When I was at school, there was a lady who won the what was it? What do they call it? Orators Challenge, the school's orator challenge for,
Debating or something like that.
out of the whole area, like the whole province or whatever you call it in America. So state. And everybody was very impressed with her, and all the rest of it. It was about positivity. And I sat down, and she was allowed to get up on stage and give it to the whole school. And she talked about this positivity, and I felt sick through the whole thing. It's like, yeah, sure, you think everybody can be positive and all the rest of it. You try change instantly, quickly. And I was just like, phony, holy rubbish this. And I was really pissed off, because I was always very sensitive to truth. And she was just painting everything must be positive, only focus on positive. And I was like, that's not where most of us are. And I'm not even you. I can hear it in your voice, So I came to realize when I hit Abraham Hicks and they start saying there's a vibrational scale to depression to happiness. Okay. And if you go to revenge, you're one higher up on depression. If you go from rage, you're one higher up on revenge. If you go to frustration, you're one higher up. And then I started realizing that's the piece I was missing in her talk. That's the piece she wasn't amplifying and accentuating in the whole process, is that, yes, focusing just on what you want doesn't always feel good because you're so far away from what you don't want. So you start realizing that you make a focus wheel and you start taking what you don't want outside, what you do want inside the focus wheel, and you start making the 1 to 12 on the clock, and you start writing words that are slightly better vibration than the last one, and then you focus on them and you build up your vibration. And then you start understanding how to get from the one place, from the subconscious old programming in your mind, to the clarity and focus and the ease of focusing on what you want in the present.
I like that a lot about their teaching, the fact that they have that emotional guidance scale and that they teach very clearly the importance of the small steps. I think those small steps are important. I've actually have gotten to the point now where, unless I'm talking to somebody who really doesn't know the topic, I'm actually trying to avoid the words positive and negative, because I think they actually kind of convey the wrong meaning, especially considering the fact that one person's positive can be another person's negative, and considering the fact that a lot of the time when somebody says positive, what they mean is, I want you to behave a certain way because that's the only way I'm going to be happy. And all of a sudden the whole thing is like topsy-turvy on top of itself, head down and so forth. So I kind of avoid the positive negative labels. And I like, my favorite way to think about stuff is a better feeling thought or a better feeling perception. And also, what do I like rather than what's positive? Because what I like when I'm actually not depressed anymore, but let's see, how low do I get? Frustrated. I get that. I definitely get the frustrated. So when I'm feeling frustrated, what feels better? Well, boredom feels a whole lot better than frustration. It really does.
Yes.
So yeah, I like that better. Definitely. And that's kind of my way of getting around the whole thing about being diametrically the opposite. Got to be way off in that positive zone. Otherwise I'm not making any ground. Because like you pointed out, you don't have to actually get it right. Just make, even if you don't feel like you're being grateful, but you're doing your best, you're still gaining ground. You just don't necessarily know it,
Yeah, because the idea is that at that point, you are not running the old program. You may not be running a new one, but you're definitely not running the old program anymore. And that's the path to journey. But for me, I came to understand it when I realized what kind of a hold these programs have. And I'll give you an example. I grew up in the tropics, and everybody in the tropics is deathly afraid of snakes. And there are different kinds of snakes, but you are taught as a child, if you see a snake, kill it or run. Don't try to figure out what kind of snake it is, and if it's and
Don't
so
negotiate with it. Don't invite over lunch.
Right, because there are some very deadly snakes in the tropics. And I remember once with my husband and I was out doing something in the garden, and there was like this snake, and I was like, honey, there's a snake. And he came and he said, oh, it's just a garter snake. I'm like, it's a snake. You don't understand. Kill it. And he was trying to shoo it gently so it would run. I was like, no, it's going to come back. He wants to kill the poor creature. But,
a great example of programs.
Absolutely,
I know,
yes.
exactly. And that's what I mean. So that was a program for me. So even though as a scientist and as someone who understands that there are different species that have different different things associated with them, there was that program running, and it's just reminded me of sometimes, I mean, this was one where I was conscious of the program that was running, but there are programs that we have running that we're not conscious of, and sometimes they're in direct contradiction to some of the conscious programs we're trying to run. And so we have to learn to be gentle with ourselves as we, practice this, the idea of law of attraction, and try to shift our focus more on the things we want, and just be aware of some of that's happening. And,
by the way, it's not just people in the tropics. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I mean, like Louise grew up in like northern New England, and she has the exact same fear.
Okay.
Exactly the same way.
Right.
I was brought up with a mountain next to me called Mumba's Kop, Mumba's Head, and the story goes the guy took 70 dogs up the mountain, and none came back. They were all killed by Mumbas, and we had Mumbas that we didn't see, and we're driving past them, and they were like up at the window, staring in at us. And when I was hiking, I bumped into the story was there was a guy in front of me with his backpack and all the rest of it. I was with my backpack, and behind him, and the two of us were a little bit ahead of everybody. And I saw this cobra rear up with this huge head and stare me in the eyes. And without even knowing it, I jumped through the air and bumped the guy in front of me. And he was very annoyed with me, and he saw me standing dead still, staring at this thing, and adrenaline had pumped through my nose and was all over the place. And all I could see in all my vision was this huge head of a cobra. My sight zoomed in on this whole thing. I was completely frozen because I knew from all the rules that I was told, stand dead still. Move. So those are the rules I was told. So I'm standing there completely frozen. He looks at me, looks where I'm looking, sees the cobra, freezes himself, and we both stand there staring at this cobra until this cobra realized that we were not going to attack it after a long time, and it slithered away. Both of us still stood there completely frozen. I think we moved for about half an hour. It was like a very, very scary experience for me. That adrenaline in my nose and the increase in my sight was, and the smell of the adrenaline. Oh my God, it's something else.
That reminded me of something as Louis is talking about the adrenaline, because one of the things that Bruce Lipton talks about in his book, he says that one of the ways that we can tell whether our conscious thoughts are in line with our subconscious thoughts is based on what our body is doing. So you could be saying, I'm not afraid, but your heart is racing and your pupils are dilated. And it's similarly like with, as far as this pandemic is concerned, there are people who might be, saying consciously, yes, I'll be okay. It's not a death sentence. But there might be some subconscious thoughts at the back of their mind that, viruses are deadly. And then there was the flu pandemic of 1918 and all this stuff just running around in their mind. But what happened, one of the things that you can use to counter that is when you practice gratitude, right? So gratitude in practice is saying something positive, but also making sure to feel positive. So that way you're connecting the mind with the body, you're connecting the conscious and the subconscious when you add the emotion part of it, because that is what is actually more powerful than just giving utterance to the words. But if you can actually feel it in your body, then you know that it's actually sinking deeper into the subconscious, or the programming, or whatever you want to call it.
In LOA language, we say the universal law of attraction reacts to what you mean, not what you say.
Yes, right. Yeah.
That's absolutely true. By the way, Josephine also had a second question, more of a topic question than a question asking for advice, following up on what she said. And it kind of points out that there is the other way of looking at things. We were just talking about actually, we were just talking about these great stories about snakes and so forth. But before that, we were talking about incrementalism, incrementally moving up the scale and so forth. But there is another school of thought on this, and that is to literally put yourself into that place that you're not currently in and try to imagine and try to believe it. She, excuse me, she listed Neville Goddard. She called it a Neville-like mentality. She asked, what would it be like if you were healthy already? And if you're in a state of unhealth or disease, or maybe you're really maybe you're one of those few people who actually do have the disease so far, that's a long way away from where you are. Whereas I feel very healthy, so for me, healthy is like, well, right here. I don't have to even reach for it, But nevertheless, there is that school of thought that says, well, if you can imagine it, you can make it real, no matter how far away it is. Yes. So I wanted to ask you guys about that. I mean, Louis, you talked very eloquently about how just one step on the scale is so important, but how far up the scale can a person reach?
Well, how far up a scale can a person reach? I don't think there's any limit to where you can go. That's not really the question. I think the question you're kind of asking, correct me if I'm wrong, is can you go from sad to happy like that? The speed, I think that's maybe what you're asking.
It's certainly part of it, yeah. I think I was
so
leaving it.
Quantum leaps is very possible.
You want to go? I mean, it's really. Yeah. I'm giving you options.
you remember I brought on Liz onto the podcast in the beginning, and she talked about her quantum leap. Now, she didn't do it justice as far as I'm concerned. I could tell her story better than she could.
Well, she did try very hard.
No. She was just being very careful, because there is a lot of stigma and all the rest of it related to being enforced to go to a mental hospital, etc., because of her situation. So, and you start learning that you get judged by the government and the existing structure a lot, in many different ways.
You might even give people. A lot of people may not remember that interview. You might just give like a quick scenario of summary of what happened.
Well, she went to America to an energy conference. She got completely high. She got connected with Source and completely tripped out. She was running around naked in the garden and going around and telling people what they want and what they don't want and what's going to happen to them, etc. So, it wasn't funny for her or her family, to be honest. It was really tough, but she went from a certain level of vibration to a much higher one in a very short period of time, and there were drastic consequences. So yes, Josephine, you can have the jumps quickly, but as I was mentioning last week, which was a very important thing, is the little incremental steps should be the celebrated ones. The big ones from rags to riches and heartbeat, is not necessarily the ones we should be focusing on, because each of us are going little step by step all the time. And, to me, I personally want to praise those little steps in everybody all the time.
Absolutely.
That is what I'm looking for. And yes, you can have a quantum leap, and I've got no problem with it. There just may be some consequences to it that you will have to deal with, but you might get away scot-free. You never know.
Well, it's true. Everybody's experience is going to be different along that line. I think the takeaway I take from it is that you're going to get a lot more, like you just said, you're going to get a lot more of the small incremental steps. Those are the ones to celebrate, because there's so many more of them to celebrate. So we have lots of reasons to be appreciative throughout our day. Oh, well, this worked and that was great and this was fabulous, and all these little things that just kept getting better and better and better. That's going to have a very strong cumulative effect.
Yes.
Just by focusing on them, just by getting.
And then you get into the resonant frequency, which just starts exploding it. So,
right.
The law of attraction is now not releasing resistance; it's now gaining momentum on the downslope. It's now really heading and amplifying on what you want, and you're not spending all your time getting rid of the resistance. Now you're now really accumulating more of what you want because of the law of attraction, and you start really flying, absolutely achieving incredible goals and experiences.
So let's take this interesting discussion we've been having and apply it to the original topic. The original topic is staying healthy, staying well, and I perhaps might even broaden it, because there are going to be people who are, believe it or not, there are actually people who have illnesses other than coronavirus. It's a hard thing to believe, but but it's really true, And
I feel sorry for them trying to get into the health system at this point.
Yes, well, there is that too. But if somebody is in a state of dis-ease, one of the things they want to know is how well. I understand. I'm a conscious creator. I am trying to practice this stuff. What steps can I take to get into that health and well-being mindset, that mindset that Neville Goddard calls, assuming that feeling of the wish fulfilled, in this case, the feeling of being healthy and feeling well and so forth.
As many a guru has said, fake it until you make it.
Make it till you make it, yeah.
And I never understood that in the beginning. I said, fake? I don't want to be fake. I want to be spiritual.
What happens is when you do get into that place of the imagination, it's kind of like I was saying, when you have the thought consciously, but then you incorporate the emotions, then now it's part of your body. You're now feeling it. And as Candace Pert used to say, you're now sending signals to every single cell in your body, and your cells respond to those signals, to that different energy level. And so every time you go there, even if it's just in your imagination, you are now sending a different energy signal to your cells that is going to be more conducive to health and life-giving and longevity. So, anything that you can do to interrupt the message of disease and death is going to be beneficial. And like Louis was saying, the little increments is what it starts it off, and eventually, hopefully, those will get become longer and longer sessions until finally that you are actually in that place. And so, there are things we can do, and we know how the mind is, of course, the most powerful, because our thoughts are what bring us health. But along with that, as we are making our minds stronger, there are things that we can do that, like we mentioned before, incorporating the breathing, exercise, your diet, making sure you get sleep so that your body is in a better place to help you get to that eventual place of optimal health.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that Cindy Chavez, who does the Wednesday show with me, likes to talk about is being beneath the curve.
What happened?
Where things are going to go as we're trying to be deliberate creators, that there's like this straight line, 45-degree angle growth curve that we're going to be on. But the actual curve is like this flat. And then finally you start to get an upward curve until it becomes hyperbolic,
Right.
And that's what the usual experience is, which means most of the time you're not coming close to hitting your goal. It doesn't feel like you're making any progress. It's where we tend to give up the easiest. I think that's kind of an argument in favor of what Louis was saying about the incremental approach, basically appreciating every little thing that happens. It helps you get through that pattern. But it can be particularly tough if you are not well, if you're feeling disease, to feel like you're making progress. Because a lot of the time it can feel like you're not making progress even when you are.
Yeah, but you have to remember it's and I go back to the programming, like the neurons. The video keeps pausing. Is it my internet or theirs?
Everything's smooth, sure. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So in your brain you have these neurons that are connected, and those are the programs that you want to disengage. And that's going to, as you run new programs, those others, the old programs are going to get weaker. And some neuroscientists talk about it as a groove down the hill that water runs, and every time you pour water, it's going to run there. And if you want to make a new groove for the water to run, it's going to be not as deep, and it's going to be slower, and it's going to take a while for the water to make a new groove down the hill that's going to be the new path or the new program that you're going to run. And eventually, as that becomes the main path, the main program that you're running, the old grooves, the old programming, the old neuronal connections are going to die, and the new one is going to predominate. So that's how I like to think about it.
Yeah, I like that analogy as well. Abram uses the pipes. So if you've got pipes that are clogged and got a lot of grit and grime and dirt in them, spending time chipping out all those all that grime, etc., or laying new pipes, which one is easier?
Right. Laying new ones, definitely.
Yeah.
Laying new pipes, using them, and the old ones will just rust and disappear and vanish.
Absolutely.
So that is my one thing I wanted to mention to anybody who may know somebody who's got coronavirus, who is listening to this and has got it, and is coughing a lot. So from a Jinshin Jitsu perspective, you take your arms and you hold them here, so between the shoulder and the elbow. No, lower. You aren't. Yeah, there. So you hold it there. And you can maybe dig in a little bit. You'll find it a little bit tender there, but it'll help stop coughing. All right. And it is extremely effective. My 80-year-old dad wandering around the hospital used to be telling everybody, who was coughing, hold this. It's very good for you. And if anybody didn't believe in all this stuff, it was my dad. Okay. It really works pretty much on anybody anyway.
Us again. I'm not sure.
So you take the right hand and you put it there in between. Yeah, and you take the left hand and you put it there. And it's a little bit digging in there where it's a little bit tender, halfway between the elbow and the shoulder.
And you press into it?
No. You can just hold it gently, lovingly. Okay. So hug yourself. They call it the hug. Just hug yourself like that, but it'll help coughing. And I really wanted to get that out there for everybody. It's very powerful.
That's very good. Hey, I want to remind I want to remind everybody of something else too. And that is, if you're not yet subscribing to the podcast, we want you to do that because this is the kind of program you get every single day. So become a subscriber, go to the homepage of our website, loatoday.net. And at the top of the page, you will find instructions on how to subscribe in usually 1 or 2 clicks. And also check us out on YouTube. You can do a search for LOA Today podcast videos. We'll pop right up there. Just click the subscribe button. And if you click the little bell next to it, you'll get notified every single time that we're live or every time that we post a video, or both, really. Actually, you'll get notified for everything. So, subscribe and share the fact that you're subscribing. And for those many, many hundreds of you who are already subscribed, thank you very much. We really love the fact that you're part of our community here. If any of you are currently dealing with an illness, maybe statistically, it's possible that maybe 1 or 2 of our listeners have been infected with it. Use some of the techniques we've talked about here because these are very effective. Many of them are backed by medical science. A lot of them are just backed by pure experience. And if you have any doubt about it, just, check us out on YouTube and look at Louis. That'll give you a really good clue that this works. He's an example of it, So, yeah.
I think he's airbrushed personally, but
I'd love to know how to airbrush video.
Well, we'll give you a little time to work that one out. I think. Hey, you figured out how to get the moving video background. I mean, you're way ahead of us on that one. So you just got to get the airbrush tool in there. That's all. Deal with the hair issue.
I like the way it makes it look like I don't have any gray hair though.
Well, now you're going to convince a whole bunch of people to go out and get themselves green screens so they can get rid of their hair.
I don't think it'll work with you, Walt. Sorry.
I don't think so.
Notice I didn't say me. I just said other people. No, actually, I'm very hopeful. You give me inspiration just because of how you've been able to essentially recover your youth. I mean, putting it bluntly, that's what you've been able to do. I figure, well, if Louis can do it, then I got a good shot at being able to do it too. So, enjoy this white hair while I've got it because it's not going to last this way. It's going to start getting darker. Yeah. Well, it's not going to disappear. That's the other direction.
Well, yes.
It looks very distinguished.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Louise keeps telling me she'd be disappointed if my hair turned dark, but that's one of us. Anyway.
She'll get over it.
She'll get over it. Yeah, that's true.
Or not.
Okay, so you get one last thing to tell people. What's the one thought you want to leave with them about how to stay well and be well? I'm going to go to Ioana first. What's the one thought?
Yes, as I was preparing for the talk, the podcast today, I thought about something that my husband and I started doing last night. We actually watched a stand-up comedy routine on Netflix, and I thought about how good laughter is for your health, for your immune system. Remember Norman Cousins, I think his name was, who healed himself of cancer by laughing, getting lots of laughter every day. And so that is something that, you can try to incorporate. There's so much bad news and all the other stuff going on in the world that, could spend some time just laughing. And I would recommend Robin Williams, when was live in what was that? His routine, but I forgot.
Well, he appeared in New York at the Met. I know that was one of his things. He also was on
I think
the Actors Studio.
Yeah, Madison Square Garden or the Met or someone that was one of the best. I mean, that is just so hilarious. It'll definitely put you in a better mood and give a boost to your immune system and your health, and you make you feel better all at once. So there.
Interesting side story about his appearance at the Met. His producer, who was helping him put on that show, once told the story that they had worked leading up to the program to get all his material right so that he could have a nice smooth show and so forth. And then he actually did the show and was amazed to discover after the fact that 20% of the show was brand new. He never heard it before. That's the kind of performer Robin was. He could just make it up as he was going along. Just
very
really
spontaneous.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. Laughter and humor is really great. Louis, what's the thought you want to leave people with?
Talking about movies, I thought I would bring up a movie I watched recently. It's a Disney movie.
Somebody has.
It's brand new. It's brand new. I don't even know how you'll get a copy. It's not the easiest one to get a copy, but if and when it does come out, remember this one. I think it's so relevant to the time we're in, and it's called Stargirl.
Stargirl, okay.
Stargirl, and it's got Grace Van der Waal in it, and I don't know if you know who she is, but she's an incredible singer who's won America's Got Talent or something.
Okay.
And she is, I believe, a light for this planet, and it shines in that movie. I think it's beautiful. She really does that role well. It's beautifully done. Yeah.
Well, look out.
I'm always on the lookout for a good film that picks me up, and there aren't many of them out there. So to hear that there's one that I haven't seen, I'm looking forward to it. So thank you very much. All right. Good stuff. Well, hopefully our listeners took some good things away from that. Thank you guys very much. Thank you, live streamers, as well. And we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Up at everyone.
Bye-bye.